I used to think if I stayed long enough, they'd remember to include me. The subject line blinked final head count. Family gathering this Sunday. It was from my mother. I opened it slowly, like something might change if I looked at it long enough. The list was neatly organized. Savannah, centerpieces and drinks. Dad, pick up rental chairs. Uncle Gary, barbecue. No role for me. No mention at all. I scrolled twice, once fast, once line by line. At the bottom, a note. Please respond by Friday. We want everything to run smoothly this time. Nothing in my inbox besides sales and appointment reminders. In the family group chat, the most recent message was from Savannah. Let's just keep it simple this time. No drama. I stood in the kitchen for a while with the towel still in my hand. It was damp, folded over from drying the same 3 glasses I always used. The fridge hummed. On the middle shelf, a plastic container held what was left of the lemon cake I'd made for the last gathering. No one took it home. No one asked for the recipe. When Mrs. Patterson waved at me from her porch later that afternoon, I stepped outside without thinking. She smiled wide. You all getting together again this weekend? I nodded before I could stop myself. They're lucky to have you so close. Not many kids stick around these days. I didn't correct her. Back inside, I pulled out the drawer under the microwave. Tucked between old takeout menus was a paper list I'd written months ago. Names, grocery items, decoration, notes. I had labeled it Thanksgiving planning. The edges had curled, and the ink had faded at the corner from where I'd rested my coffee mug too many times. Savannah never saw it. She always showed up last with things store-bought, but plated like homemade. That was the joke. Savannah's salad always disappears first. I cleaned it up later. No one noticed the missing bowl. My phone buzzed once. A calendar reminder I forgot to cancel. Make pecan bars. I deleted it. Mom had used to call when there was a list to make. You're good with the practical stuff, she would say. That changed the year Savannah launched her blog. A clean aesthetic, Mom told her. People trust pretty things. She never told me I looked pretty, not even on my graduation day when I wore the dress I bought with my first paycheck. Once, I asked if she liked the centerpiece I made with dried eucalyptus and paper roses. She looked at it and said, "It's a bit muted. We need something that pops." Dad never objected. His role was to nod, refill the cooler, and say, "That's nice, Hon," whenever anyone asked his opinion. He did the same when I told him I got promoted at the library last year. Then he added Savannah's thinking of starting her own candle line. Isn't that neat? I hadn't realized I was holding the dish towel again until I noticed my thumb rubbing the hem. A frayed edge curled outward, just enough to catch on the ring I still wore on my pinky. Bar Nora's. Silver dulled at the edges, slightly too small for any other finger. She once told me some things you keep, even when nobody else remembers they mattered. I hadn't heard her voice in months, but today it slipped through like steam under a door. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with the email open. I tried to imagine what would happen if I replied. I'll bring something. Would they answer? Would Mom change the list? Would Savannah write again? Actually, can we not complicate things? Probably not. More likely they'd ignore it, then act surprised if I showed up. We didn't think you were coming. They'd say all smiles but no space at the table. I closed the laptop without replying. Later, as I folded laundry, I found a linen napkin tucked between my old cardigans, one I'd embroidered years ago with the letter W in blue thread. I'd made a set of 6. Mom used them once, then said they wrinkled too easily. I kept one. This one. The stitch at the base of the W had come loose. I set it on my nightstand, not to fix it, just to look. The next morning I walked to the cafe down the street. I ordered tea instead of coffee. When the barista called my name, she looked confused as if expecting someone else. "You're Hadley," I nodded. "Pretty name. Don't hear it much anymore." She handed me the cup. My name was spelled wrong. I walked home slower than usual. Leaves stuck to the soles of my boots. The house looked the same as always, brick faded to rose beige shutters, missing paint. On the porch, a basket of dried hydrangeas leaned sideways. I'd arranged them last spring. No one had moved them since. Inside, the email was still open. I hovered over the reply button. My fingers didn't move. The cursor blinked in the blank box like it was waiting for a justification. I closed it again. I washed the dish towel for no reason and hung it carefully on the oven handle, smoothing the corners. The thread still curled up at the hem, and I let it. I didn't reply. That was enough. I used to believe that if I didn't make trouble, I'd be remembered for something gentler. The linen napkins are still folded in the bottom drawer, tucked behind the box of foil, and the mismatched serving spoons. 6 of them all embroidered with a single letter W for Whitaker stitched in deep blue thread. I finished them the year I turned 24. I thought they'd be used at Thanksgiving. Savannah brought store-bought runners with gold leaf designs instead. "These look more modern," Mom said. Mine were folded and placed on top of the fridge. They stayed there for 6 months before I took them home. At family dinners, I was usually the last one in the kitchen and the first one to start cleaning. No one asked. It just happened that way. Savannah was good at drifting, laughing, sipping, slipping away before the casserole dish cooled. One Christmas, I overheard her say Hadley likes tidying. It's her love language or something. She didn't mean it kindly, but everyone chuckled, so I let it settle. Dad once said, "You don't take up much space. That's a gift." He meant it as a compliment. During my college graduation, they arrived 15 minutes after it started. Mom adjusted her scarf and whispered that the traffic was brutal. Dad scanned the crowd like looking for a familiar landmark. After the ceremony, I waited by the flagpole. Savannah waved from the parking lot, already in the passenger seat. "She's not feeling great," Mom explained, "so we're going to get her home before the headache gets worse." I held my diploma against my chest until the car pulled out of sight. I still have the program from that day folded inside an old planner. Page 4 lists my name beneath a heading that reads, Bachelor of Arts in English Literature. The ink is slightly smudged from the condensation off my water bottle. I've never framed it. For Grandma Nora's 60th birthday, I planned the entire evening. Cooked from her old handwritten recipe cards, arranged a centerpiece made of pine cones and ribbon, even found a vintage cake topper that matched the photo of her wedding day. At the end of the meal, Mom raised a glass. "To family," she said. "And to this beautiful evening, I'm so glad I offered up the kitchen." Someone laughed. Savannah toasted back. "And the playlist. Thanks for letting me be DJ." No one mentioned the hours I spent preparing the roast, or that I ironed the tablecloth, or that I drove across town to pick up the cake from the only bakery still making lemon chiffon with custard layers. Grandma squeezed my hand later. Her palm was soft, almost translucent. "Quiet loyalty doesn't go unnoticed, darling." "Not by the ones who know how to see," that was the last party she attended. There's a photo from that night in the old family album. I'm in the corner of the frame behind the balloon arch, holding an empty plate. Savannah is centered mouth open, mid-laugh, framed by 2 candles and the cake. Dad's hand is on her shoulder. Mom is reaching across the table toward her with a glass of sparkling cider. I don't remember that moment, but the image makes it feel real. The album is on the top shelf of the hall closet now. No one really looks at it anymore. One summer, Savannah threw a backyard gathering for her friends. Just friends, she said, but the entire family ended up involved. I baked mini pies. 4 dozen. No one asked, but I wanted to bring something. After the guests left, I started to clean. Mom passed by and lifted a pie crust off the counter. "Didn't quite set," she muttered. I threw the rest away that night. There was a time I thought maybe if I said less, I would be chosen more. Not chosen over anyone, just chosen. I once made a list of every time Savannah got flowers. Recital blog launch feature in a lifestyle newsletter. I never got flowers, but I didn't like lilies anyway. They made my nose itch. I kept showing up. Helped Savannah move twice, once into her dorm, once into her first apartment. I packed her teacups in bubble wrap, labelled her boxes with thick black marker swept behind the fridge. At the end of the day, she gave me a mug that said, "Good vibes only." The handle was chipped. "Maybe this one's more your style," she joked. "You don't drink lattes anyway." I placed it behind the other mugs. It's still there. The chip is slightly larger now. When I turned 27, Dad forgot. It wasn't intentional. He handed me a flyer for a retirement plan and said, "You're getting to the age where you'll want to think about these things." I nodded. He looked relieved. Mom remembered. She left a note on the counter that morning. "There's coffee in the pot. Happy birthday." The Y looped too high. Savannah posted a photo of herself at brunch that day. The caption read, "So grateful for this beautiful life." She wore a pink dress I gave her 2 years earlier. No tag, no credit. I saved the post, not because it hurt, just because I wanted to remember. People assume the ones who stay quiet have nothing to say. That silence equals simplicity. I never believed that. I just didn't see the point in making noise when the room was already full of echo. Once, during a thunderstorm, the power went out while I was folding laundry. I sat in the dark with the basket beside me and realized I'd memorized every sock pair in the house. I don't know why that felt important at the time. There's a drawer in the hallway filled with greeting cards no one mailed. Blank insides, pretty fonts, gold foil. I almost sent one to Grandma Nora the year before she died. I'd written her a note about the book I was reading. Never sealed it. Some things don't need to be sent. They just need to be written. I once thought the quiet ones were forgettable, but maybe the quiet ones are just the ones who never got handed the microphone, and maybe they don't need it. I learned eventually that being left out doesn't always come as a slammed door. Sometimes it just doesn't come at all. The envelope was glossy with red foil around the edge. Mom always liked those cards with pre-printed messages and cartoon snowmen. Inside it read, "Wishing you peace and joy," from Doug, Marlene, Savannah, and family. I turned it over once thinking there might be something handwritten, even just a stray, "Love you." The back was blank. The postmark came from our town. It had been mailed, not dropped off. I left it unopened on the counter for 2 days. Then I folded it in half and slid it into the drawer where the scissors used to be. That was the year I stayed home for Christmas. No one noticed. A week later, Savannah posted a story of the tree lit up in the living room. The caption read, "Home is where you're celebrated, not tolerated." A friend commented with heart emojis. Mom replied with a string of gold stars. I watched it expire after 24 hours. The mug I use each morning has a faded photo of Grandma Nora on one side. It's off-center, printed by one of those kiosks at the drugstore. I gave it to her for her birthday when I was 16. After she passed, no one claimed it. The handle is chipped where it hit the sink once, just hard enough to leave a mark. I run my thumb over that chip every time I rinse it. I once received an email inviting me to speak at a panel about aging and community caregiving. I'd written a piece about routines with Grandma Nora, how we measured mornings by toast doneness and pill organizers. The invitation came with a small stipend and a request for a photo. I told Mom about it over the phone. There was a pause. Then, "That's nice. Savannah just got featured in Modern Nesting. She's the face of their winter campaign." I opened the link she sent me. Savannah stood in front of a white fireplace, holding a mug that read, "Cozy Queen." The article called her a rising tastemaker with a gift for authentic living. In the interview, she mentioned how important it was to have supportive parents. There was a photo of the three of them on a plaid sofa. I wasn't in the background. A week after the article, Savannah texted me, "Can you take a look at my pitch draft for the homegrown partnership? They want something warm, but elevated." I read it 3 times before responding. "I think it already sounds like you." That was the only thing I sent. When I was clearing out Grandma Nora's closet after she passed, I found a wool shawl tucked behind her sewing box. It smelled like her lavender and cedar. Folded inside was a note written in her uneven cursive. "For Hadley. You always saw the small things." No one else saw that note. I didn't tell them. Some pieces of kindness belong in silence. One evening, I ran into Mom in the grocery store. We stood in the same aisle for 10 minutes while she tried to decide between 2 brands of bottled water. "Savannah swears by this one," she said, holding up the taller bottle. "Says it makes her skin glow." "You should try it." I looked down at my cart tea bags, oatmeal laundry soap. "She's coming home this weekend. You should stop by." I nodded. "Maybe not during dinner. We're doing something small, just the 3 of us." I reached for the regular water and walked away without answering. I once wrote a post about how Grandma used to tap the rim of her cup before drinking like it sealed something. When I showed it to Mom, she stared at the screen too long. "You shouldn't make it sound like Grandma was your responsibility." I didn't reply. She had all of us. The post never went live, so that night I dreamt of her voice. "Some people shine quiet. Don't ever forget to keep your own keys, darling." I didn't understand it at the time. I thought she meant apartment keys, or the spare for the car. I kept them anyway in a drawer with paper clips and a measuring tape that doesn't retract all the way. One Thanksgiving, Savannah gave a toast. "I'm grateful for growth and for the people who see me clearly." She looked at Mom when she said it. Dad raised his glass. "I always said you had star quality." They clinked glasses across the table. I was the one who carved the turkey that year. No one mentioned it. The photo from that night hangs in the hallway. Savannah is laughing with her eyes closed. Mom and Dad are reaching for rolls. I'm in the kitchen in the background, holding the serving tray. My reflection is caught in the oven door. I used to think maybe I blurred on camera, that I moved too much to be centered, but the truth is simpler. They never aimed the lens at me. Sometimes I want to erase my name from their contact lists and see how long it takes them to notice. But I don't. I keep my name where it's always been, just below their favorites, just above their forgotten. The mug with Grandma's photo has a faint brown ring inside I can't scrub out. I stopped trying last year. It still holds heat just fine. Some endings don't arrive with doors slamming. They arrive mid-sentence between the sound of grocery bags crinkling and the click of shoes on tile. I had just set down the last bag when Mom stepped into the doorway still holding her phone. "You'll need to move out by the end of the month. We're selling the house." She didn't look up from the screen. The receipt was still in my hand. I unfolded it without reading just to give my fingers something to do. Dad sat at the table, glasses low on his nose, flipping through the paper. He didn't lift his eyes. "It's time you figured things out on your own." His voice was flat, like he was reading a headline. Savannah forked another bite of salad from the bowl in front of her. She wore one of her new blazers, cream with tortoiseshell buttons. "Daddy says I deserve a proper place downtown. I've already got my eye on a loft with exposed brick." I looked around the kitchen. Same fridge with the faded magnet from the lake cabin. Same bowl of apples no one ever ate. Where exactly am I supposed to go? I didn't raise my voice. Mom crossed her arms, finally meeting my eyes. "You're nearly 30, Hadley. Surely you can manage. Maybe it's time to get a roommate or something." Savannah didn't glance up. "No one asked you to be a martyr." She pushed the plate away half empty. There was a loose thread at the hem of my sweater. I pulled at it once, then tucked it under my sleeve. It was the same sweater I wore the night Grandma passed. I remember her hand on mine, bony but still warm. Sometimes the ones who should protect you won't. Her voice had trembled not from weakness, but from truth. The hallway was quiet as I walked back toward my room. My shoes didn't squeak. No one followed. The rattan chest at the foot of my bed had always been Grandma's, cedar-lined, hinges that creaked when you opened them too fast. Mom once said I could keep it since no one else wants that old thing. I lifted the lid slowly like it might speak if I startled it. Underneath the patchwork quilts and yellowed clippings was a manila envelope with my name written in curling script. For Hadley only. I sat cross-legged on the floor and opened it. My name again on official paper, county seal notary stamp, a deed transfer signed 2 years ago. Grandma Nora had left the house to me. Not in theory, not in sentiment. In full. No letter of explanation. No story. Just facts. Quiet and legal. Downstairs I heard Savannah laughing into the phone. "They're literally the best parents. I mean, who else gets a downtown loft funded by family?" Her voice carried easily. Dad murmured something about a walk-through date. Mom clinked a glass into the sink. I folded the papers back into the envelope, pressing each corner flat. Later, I placed the envelope under my pillow, not because I needed to hide it, because I wasn't ready to carry it anywhere else yet. Mom stopped me in the hallway just before dinner. "You'll need to clear out Grandma's room first. The new family has a teenage daughter. They're bringing her next week to see it." She brushed past me like I was furniture that needed dusting. I opened the door to Grandma's room and stood still for a moment. The curtains were half-tied. A vase of plastic flowers still sat on the dresser. I remembered how she used to sit by the window with her tea, watching the yard, like it might bloom just for her. The corner of the room where I read to her every night had been cleared. The chair was gone. I knelt on the floor where her slippers used to rest. The carpet was still indented from their shape. I placed my hand there briefly, like pressing into memory. That evening, I set the table without being asked. 4 plates, even though no one acknowledged it. Dad checked his watch. "Weston says closing could be early next month. Sooner, if we're flexible." He folded his napkin before even touching the food. Mom reached for the salt. "The family seems lovely. They want to keep the hydrangeas in the yard. Isn't that sweet? She said it like charity." Savannah held up her phone. "I'm thinking of filming a move-in vlog. People love transformation stories." No one looked at me. I ate without asking, pushed peas with my fork until they formed a line. Savannah stood first. Dinner was fine. Not like Dad's ribs, but passable. Her eyes swept over me. "I hope your new place has a stove." Mom started gathering dishes. We'll need you to box up your things soon. Weston's bringing the buyers next weekend. I stacked my plate on top of Savannah's and carried them to the sink. I washed them slowly, watching the water swirl around the chipped porcelain. The ring on my finger caught a bit of soap. Grandma's. It slipped once, then held. I dried my hands on the same towel I'd been using all week. The hem was coming undone. No one said thank you. No one noticed the envelope hidden in the folds of my blanket. They had made their plans. They had spoken clearly. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just stood at the sink and let the water run a little longer than needed. Some things lose weight the longer you carry them. Others get sharper. I sat at the table while the light moved across the counter, like it had somewhere better to be. The envelope lay in front of me, still sealed at the flap, though I'd opened it 3 times already. I didn't reread the deed. I didn't need to. Mom passed behind me on her way to the laundry room. There are boxes in the garage. Use the ones without labels. We need the good ones for Savannah's move. She didn't wait for a reply. Savannah called out from upstairs. Do you think the couch will fit by the window? Or should I angle it? No one answered, but she kept talking. I'm getting the espresso machine. It's stupid expensive, but... priorities. I looked down at my hand. The crease in the envelope had softened. It folded now without resistance. Dad glanced up from the paper. If you get started today, we can keep things on schedule. Weston's bringing the contract Thursday. He smiled like he'd offered me a coupon. That's the spirit. I didn't argue. I folded the envelope back in half and slid it into the pocket of my worn coat, the one with the stitched lining coming loose, left side next to the inner seam. It fit like it had been meant for that space. At noon, I walked to the cafe off 5th. Vivian was already there, 2 mugs and sleeves pushed up to her elbows like she meant business. You look still. I sat without answering. She handed me a folder and her phone. Jake's waiting. He says it won't take long. At the county clerk's office, the woman behind the desk typed slowly. Her nails were square and clean, the kind that clacked gently. Name on the record, I gave mine. She tilted the screen. Yep. Transfer recorded 2 years ago. Legal and clean. You're the sole owner. Her tone was flat. It didn't ask questions. She slid a printed copy across the counter. Keep this for your files. I placed it inside the same envelope and resealed it with a small piece of tape Vivian had in her purse. That night, I made tea in the chipped kettle I used to bring when I stayed at Grandma's. The whistle had dulled over time, more a sigh than a call. I sat with a book I didn't read and opened a new tab on my laptop. Property fraud consequences, then quiet title action, then cease and desist real estate. I made a folder. I named it Nora. Savannah walked in while I was highlighting a paragraph. I found the rug. It's hand-woven. Dad says I can expense it as a housewarming gesture. She pulled out a measuring tape. I think I'll repaint this room. It's too... old. I clicked save without speaking. She paused by the door. You're being weird. Just so you know, this energy isn't cute. I didn't answer. She left the tape on the floor. Later, Mom knocked gently. I need your decision about the furniture. If you're not taking the dresser, we're selling it with the house. She waited. It's not like you'll have space wherever you end up. I nodded once. That was enough. Each night, I read one more page of municipal code. Each morning I folded the envelope and carried it again. Not for comfort. For precision. Vivian sent links to attorneys. Jake sent a draft letter. Weston's business card appeared in the recycling bin. No one asked where I was going. No one noticed I stopped opening the group chat. Savannah posted a reel of her walking through the living room, narrating before shots. "Can you believe this place will be mine?" Mom smiled in the background. It was always meant for someone with vision. The video got 12,000 views. I watched it twice. Not because I needed to, but because I didn't want to look away anymore. At dinner, Dad mentioned a walkthrough. They're bringing their daughter. She's excited about the window seat. He tapped his glass. "We've done well." Mom nodded. "It's the right move. We've given everything we can." She looked directly at me. "You'll understand someday." Savannah passed the rolls. "Just think your next chapter starts with your own space." How freeing is that? I placed my napkin on my lap. I refilled my own glass. In the evenings, I sat with the deed on my knees, tracing the signature. Grandma's name still steady. The notary stamp still legible. Nothing had changed but how I read it. I didn't print copies. I didn't share it. I didn't make announcements. I just kept showing up to my own life, one quiet piece at a time. And when Mom reminded me again, boxes. By Friday. Weston's schedule is tight. I folded the towel over the sink bar and smoothed the edges. I didn't say no. I didn't say yes. The envelope stayed where it was, folded twice, sealed once, waiting for the exact moment someone else would try to take what no longer belonged to them. And I would simply show them. It never did. I didn't know silence could have texture until it was mine. The new apartment sits above a store that sells yarn and seasonal flags. It smells faintly of lavender and printer ink. The floor creaks differently here, longer, more deliberate. I don't need much. A small kettle, 3 books, a wool blanket folded at the foot of the bed. The blanket used to be Grandma Nora's. It still holds the faint warmth of her like the corner of a sunlit chair. The window faces south. Morning light filters through at a slant, soft and non-judgmental. She once told me, "Morning light forgives everything." I didn't understand what that meant until I stood in it alone. There are no family photos on the walls, just one frame with her picture. Black and white, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her eyes weren't smiling in the photo, but they were kind. I keep the envelope in the drawer beside the bed. Not the original. That one stays in a fireproof box, Jake recommended. The copy is folded inside a plain white folder marked only with a pencil X. I haven't opened it since I moved. I don't need to. Knowing it's there is enough. I walk to the corner cafe most mornings. The barista knows my order now. Earl Grey with oat milk, right? She presses the lid down with a practiced hand. You always look like you're figuring something out. I tip the exact change into the jar. There's a sticker on the counter that says soft doesn't mean weak. I think about peeling it off and keeping it, but I don't. At the market I buy honey from a vendor who reminds me of Mrs. Patterson. She wraps the jar in newspaper and smiles. Living on your own now? I nod. That's a good thing. Nothing wrong with hearing your own thoughts. For her first night in the apartment, I unpacked slowly. I didn't rush. The shelves stayed mostly empty. 1 cup, 1 plate, 1 fork. I left the second drawer in the kitchen untouched. There's something calming about unused space. No one texted that first week. The group chat was silent on my end, though the notifications still buzzed for Savannah's photos and Mom's passive updates. Shelton family excited for walkthrough. Savannah's espresso machine arrived. Looks so chic. I stopped checking after that. Vivian sent a voice note. You breathing okay out there? I didn't respond right away. When I did, it was short. Enough to notice it. I started rewriting my resume, the version I had felt too clean. I added back the part about volunteer caregiving. I left out anything that required performance. There's something to be said for quiet work. The kettle whistles lower here. Not sharp, more like it's clearing its throat. I let it whistle too long the first morning. By the third, I caught it in time. Grandma used to say the moment between boil and bubble is the one worth listening for. Savannah's video showed up on my feed without warning. This is what happens when you dream big. She twirled in the living room. The caption read, "Manifesting the life I deserve." Dad stood in the background holding a clipboard. Mom adjusted a vase of tulips. No one said my name. Jake emailed the final title search confirmation. All clear, registered, archived, and unchallengeable. He added a smiley face. I deleted it. I sit by the window some nights and trace the ridges on the tea mug. Not the one from the old house. This one's plain ceramic, slightly heavier in the hand. I like how it makes me slow down. I only pour what I can carry in one trip. Sometimes I think I hear her voice in the hiss of the radiator. Some things are meant to be kept quiet until they're solid enough to speak on their own. The laundromat downstairs shares a wall with the yarn store. The hum of machines runs through the floorboards like a heartbeat. I time my emails with the spin cycle. It helps. Vivian dropped by once with muffins. I brought the cinnamon ones you like. She didn't stay long, just enough to look around and say, "It feels like you." I didn't ask what that meant. I think she meant the stillness. I bought a second pillow last weekend. Not because I needed it, just because the bed looked uneven with one. That felt like reason enough. Mom sent a message. Savannah wants to know if she should credit you for the bedroom paint colors. She told the buyer you helped pick them years ago. I didn't answer. Dad followed up. Any interest in coming by before we sign Weston said it might be nice for closure. I left it unread. The bookstore 3 blocks away is hiring part-time. I printed the application on recycled paper and filled it out by hand. There's something satisfying about writing within lines meant for you. I plan to walk it over tomorrow, or the day after. The stove in the apartment clicks twice before lighting. I count both sounds every time, just to be sure. Grandma's picture stays where it is. Centered, level, still. The frame hasn't tilted once since I placed it. I take that as a kind of quiet answer. I didn't know silence could have texture until it was mine. The new apartment sits above a store that sells yarn and seasonal flags. It smells faintly of lavender and printer ink. The floor creaks differently here, longer, more deliberate. I don't need much. A small kettle, 3 books, a wool blanket folded at the foot of the bed. The blanket used to be Grandma Nora's. It still holds the faint warmth of her like the corner of a sunlit chair. The window faces south. Morning light filters through at a slant, soft and non-judgmental. She once told me, "Morning light forgives everything." I didn't understand what that meant until I stood in it alone. There are no family photos on the walls, just one frame with her picture. Black and white, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her eyes weren't smiling in the photo, but they were kind. I keep the envelope in the drawer beside the bed. Not the original. That one stays in a fireproof box Jake recommended. The copy is folded inside a plain white folder marked only with a pencil X. I haven't opened it since I moved. I don't need to. Knowing it's there is enough. I walk to the corner cafe most mornings. The barista knows my order now. Earl Grey with oat milk, right? She presses the lid down with a practiced hand. You always look like you're figuring something out. I tip the exact change into the jar. There's a sticker on the counter that says, "Soft doesn't mean weak." I think about peeling it off and keeping it, but I don't. At the market I buy honey from a vendor who reminds me of Mrs. Patterson. She wraps the jar in newspaper and smiles. Living on your own now? I nod. That's a good thing. Nothing wrong with hearing your own thoughts. The first night in the apartment, I unpacked slowly. I didn't rush. The shelves stayed mostly empty. 1 cup, 1 plate, 1 fork. I left the second drawer in the kitchen untouched. There's something calming about unused space. No one texted that first week. The group chat was silent on my end, though the notifications still buzzed for Savannah's photos and Mom's passive updates. Shelton family excited for walkthrough. Savannah's espresso machine arrived. Looks so chic. I stopped checking after that. Vivian sent a voice note. You breathing okay out there? I didn't respond right away. When I did, it was short. Enough to notice it. I started rewriting my resume, the version I had felt too clean. I added back the part about volunteer caregiving. I left out anything that required performance. There's something to be said for quiet work. The kettle whistles lower here. Not sharp, more like it's clearing its throat. I let it whistle too long the first morning. By the third, I caught it in time. Grandma used to say the moment between boil and bubble is the one worth listening for. Savannah's video showed up on my feed without warning. This is what happens when you dream big. She twirled in the living room. The caption read, Manifesting the life I deserve. Dad stood in the background holding a clipboard. Mom adjusted a vase of tulips. No one said my name. Jake emailed the final title search confirmation. All clear, registered, archived, and unchallengeable. He added a smiley face. I deleted it. I sit by the window some nights and trace the ridges on the tea mug. Not the one from the old house. This one's plain ceramic, slightly heavier in the hand. I like how it makes me slow down. I only pour what I can carry in one trip. Sometimes I think I hear her voice in the hiss of the radiator. Some things are meant to be kept quiet until they're solid enough to speak on their own. The laundromat downstairs shares a wall with the yarn store. The hum of machines runs through the floorboards like a heartbeat. I time my emails with the spin cycle. It helps. Vivian dropped by once with muffins. I brought the cinnamon ones you like. She didn't stay long. Just enough to look around and say, It feels like you. I didn't ask what that meant. I think she meant the stillness. I bought a second pillow last weekend, not because I needed it, just because the bed looked uneven with one. That felt like reason enough. Mom sent a message. Savannah wants to know if she should credit you for the bedroom paint colors. She told the buyer you helped pick them years ago. I didn't answer. Dad followed up. Any interest in coming by before we sign Weston said it might be nice for closure. I left it unread. The bookstore 3 blocks away is hiring part-time. I printed the application on recycled paper and filled it out by hand. There's something satisfying about writing within lines meant for you. I plan to walk it over tomorrow. Or the day after. The stove in the apartment clicks twice before lighting. I count both sounds every time just to be sure. Grandma's picture stays where it is. Centered, level, still. The frame hasn't tilted once since I placed it. I take that as a kind of quiet answer. They don't usually call when they need something small. The screen lit up with her name. I let it ring once before answering. We'd love for you to be there when the buyers come, just to help keep the place looking full. There was a pause afterward, like punctuation. I didn't fill it. She continued. They're bringing their children. It would be nice if the house felt lived in. I looked at the cup in my hand. The rim had a faint crack, nothing sharp, just a line that had been there too long to fix. I turned it slowly, letting the light catch the floor. They'll be here Sunday. 4 o'clock. No mention of the letter, no mention of the name on the deed. Just a request wrapped in politeness, like old wrapping paper, reused too many times. When I arrived, Savannah was already measuring the living room. She had her phone angled upward, lips parted in a half smile. Maybe a vintage espresso bar. Here, industrial vibe. Jake says it photographs well. I set my coat down without comment. She didn't look up. In the hallway, Dad stood beside Weston, the real estate agent. Weston was circling numbers on a printout, nodding to himself. Open concept Great Bones. Buyers are young, high-income tech family looking to grow into the space. He turned to me. You planning to vacate soon? Before I could answer, Savannah cut in. She's moving on finally. It's been long enough. No one corrected her. Dinner was prearranged takeout from the Italian place downtown. Mom wiped at the corner of her eyes before the buyers arrived, then smiled warmly when the doorbell rang. Letting go of the family home is bittersweet, she told Mrs. Shelton, voice soft, like a practiced lullaby. I stood behind them in the foyer, hands tucked into my coat. A faint whiff of lemon oil clung to the staircase. I had cleaned that banister the summer I stayed home while Savannah interned in Boston. No one brought that up. Your daughter, Mrs. Shelton asked, nodding toward me. Savannah stepped forward before anyone else answered. She's just helping out today. I'm actually moving in temporarily until the loft is ready. I nodded once briefly, like someone confirming a shipment. After they left, Weston leaned across the counter and tapped the folder Mom held. Closing should be smooth, assuming all names are aligned. Dad raised his glass. To new beginnings for those who deserve it. The words sat oddly shaped in the room like a piece of furniture that didn't quite fit. No one moved to toast with him. I didn't reach for a glass. Savannah began filming a short video. Sometimes you just have to sacrifice for love and growth, right? She spoke into the camera, voice pitched for effect. She used the same tone when she once described her favorite lip balm. As Weston gathered his things, a drawer slid open in the hallway desk. A photograph fell face down. I picked it up. It was a picture of Grandma Nora on the back porch, one hand raised, mid-laugh sun caught in the corner of her glasses. There was a faint watermark across the edge, and I brushed it gently, then placed it in my coat pocket. You can leave your key with Weston, Mom said on her way to the sink. I didn't respond. In the guest room, the closet was empty except for a dust-lined box and the faint outline where a suitcase used to be. I sat for a moment on the edge of the bed, fingertips pressing into the quilt I'd once mended. The patchwork squares didn't match. Grandma had never minded. From the kitchen came the clatter of cutlery. Savannah's laughter rose above it full and high like she hadn't eaten dinner in that house every Sunday for 15 years. I reached into my coat and touched the envelope. The original deed. Uncreased, unsigned by anyone but Grandma and the notary. Legal binding witnessed. Still sealed. I hadn't brought it to prove anything, only to carry the truth close. As I stood to leave, no one stopped me. No one looked up. On the way out, I passed the entry mirror. My reflection looked smaller than I remembered. Not weaker, just unreflected too long. Outside, the air held a quiet that didn't belong to them anymore. I placed the photograph of Grandma into the inside pocket of my bag and closed the zipper slowly. No goodbyes. No need. Just the sound of the lock clicking behind me, and the weight of what stayed in my pocket intact, unopened enough. Sometimes change doesn't announce itself, it just stops apologizing. I trimmed the ends first, uneven and tentative, then shorter. The mirror didn't protest. The silence in the room made space for it. When I swept the hair into the dustpan, It felt like less weight to carry. Vivian noticed first. "You're glowing. Did something shift?" I folded a receipt behind the register. I stopped asking them to see me. The bookstore was quiet on weekdays. I shelved new arrivals by spine color when no one was looking. A small defiance in an orderly world. In the back corner where nonfiction blurred into memoirs, I left a tiny ceramic pot near the window. Mint, lavender, thyme. Nothing dramatic. Just things that grew without fanfare. I placed the kettle next to the notebooks, a green one with soft corners. I wrote in it each evening, not stories, not letters, fragments, half thoughts, words I didn't say aloud. Jake sent an update, quiet tone, direct language, a few legal phrases I reread twice, then once more slower. Proceed. He didn't ask if I was ready. He just asked what I wanted done. I rinsed the cup, the one with Grandma's initials scratched faintly near the handle. I never saw her do it. I don't know if she meant to, but it stayed just deep enough to survive the dishwasher. Vivian stopped by with 2 scones and no small talk. She looked at the wall of postcards above my desk and pointed. "You kept the Oregon one. Reminded me of a place that could be real." I didn't elaborate. The room upstairs still creaked when I moved after 10 p.m. The man below never complained. Sometimes I'd hear him strumming a guitar, gently like it was part of his breathing. I never knocked. One afternoon the phone rang. Savannah. The screen lit up her name framed by an old photo we hadn't updated since 2016. The same year she forgot my birthday and posted a story of a yacht trip. I let it ring once, then twice. I made tea. The phone kept blinking. I wrapped both hands around the cup. The steam rose without hurry. On the 3rd ring, I placed the phone face down. There had been a time when her voice could shake something loose in me. A time when I thought being the quieter one meant I owed more understanding. That time had expired without fanfare. I turned to the plant by the window. One leaf had curled slightly. Too much sun. I moved the pot back an inch. That night, I read a passage in a second-hand book someone had underlined in blue pen. Not all roots grow downward. Some stretch outward, quietly claiming space. I copied that sentence into the notebook. No quotation marks, just the truth of it. The next morning, I wiped the dust from the bookshelf and found a business card tucked behind a worn copy of To the Lighthouse. A customer must have forgotten it. I traced the embossed letters with my thumb. Not important, but I kept it. Jake called once more. Douglas's attorney reached out. They'd like to discuss amicable terms. No apology, no admission, just a veiled attempt at revision. I didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. Then, they can contact the deed holder directly. Jake didn't press further. I pinned the deed copy to the inside of my filing folder. Not hidden, not on display, just where it belonged. A few days later, Mom sent a forwarded email about family reconciliation. The subject line read, "Bridges are still possible." I archived it without opening. There are things you outgrow without cutting ties. They just fall away like sleeves too short to wear again. Vivian stopped by again. She placed a pressed flower in the notebook and whispered, "You look like someone who no longer flinches." I didn't answer. Instead, I rearranged the furniture that evening, turned the bed toward the window, moved the armchair closer to the kettle. I liked the way the morning light hit the floor. No one noticed, which was the point. I found an old photo tucked between the pages of a cookbook, Grandma in her garden sleeves, rolled eyes half closed in sunlight. No caption, just the faint crease where someone had once folded it too tightly. I placed it beside the mint plant. Savannah called again a week later. No message. I didn't answer. The kettle clicked. I poured water into the cup. The ceramic warmed against my palms. The scratch by the handle had darkened over time, like it had decided to stay. I took one sip and let the silence stay full. I didn't expect the sound of paper sliding into an envelope to feel final. But it did. The letter wasn't long. I'd rewritten it twice then, once more, not because I doubted the message, but because I needed each word to land without apology. This property is under my name. No agreement is authorized without my written consent. I folded it carefully twice, inserted the certified copy of the deed, smoothed the crease with the side of my thumb, then pressed the flap shut with both hands. I didn't seal it right away. I left it on the table beside my cup, watching steam rise from tea brewed too hot. The mug still bore the faded tulips from Grandma's shelf, one petal worn off entirely. I mailed it the next morning. No ceremony, no witness, just a clerk with chipped nails and a distracted smile. Certified or regular certified. Weston's office called first. The receptionist's voice tried for neutral but couldn't hold it. There's been some confusion regarding the deed. Mr. Weston would like clarification. I didn't return the call. Jake's email came 2 hours later. Shelton's team is pulling out. They're threatening legal recourse. Just a scare tactic, but let me know if we proceed. I read it twice, then replied, Proceed. Douglas called while I was at the market. I let it ring. He tried again and again. The voicemail clipped through as I sliced into a pear. What are you doing, Hadley? This is fraud! You're ruining everything! Do you even understand the consequences? I wiped the knife clean and didn't press play a second time. Marlene's message arrived later. One line, no punctuation. Please don't destroy this for Savannah. There was no, hi, no. I hope you're okay. Just a command dressed as concern. I didn't answer. Savannah's Instagram story came that night. A close-up of her face with tears curated just enough to glisten. Some people just can't let others move on, she murmured. A pause. Then, no matter how much grace you show them, they find a way to twist it. She posted a photo of the house next sunset angle, just right, captioned, Goodbyes are hardest when they're stolen. I muted her account and turned off notifications. Later that evening, I took out the old frame from Grandma's desk drawer. The wood had splintered slightly, along the corner the glass loose in its joints. Inside her handwriting, curved, gently, unfaded. What's right isn't always loud. I placed it beside the tea kettle. The flame under the pot crackled once before settling into stillness. I printed a second letter, shorter, colder, addressed directly to the legal team representing the Sheltons. Please find enclosed legal proof of ownership. No transaction involving this property is valid without my direct and written approval. I enclosed the original deed and sealed it without lavender this time. No softness required. Vivian texted just before lunch the next day. Everything okay over there? I replied with a photo of the calligraphy frame. No caption. Jake followed up with an update. Shelton's Legal dropped their claim. They're moving on. Quietly, I replied with one word. Understood. No calls from Douglas after that. No texts from Marlene. Not even a passive comment from Savannah's curated feed. Just a blank wall of digital silence, which somehow took up less space than their noise ever had. I moved the tea tin closer to the stove, rearranged the books on the side table, slid Grandma's old notebook back into the drawer. The corner was frayed where I used to run my finger down the edge while she read recipes aloud. That night, I sat with my legs curled beneath me rereading the original deed under lamplight. My name, full, unhyphenated, unmissed, stood centered above the notary seal. Dated 2 years ago. Witnessed. Final. No edits, no footnotes, just presence. I didn't reply to the follow-up voicemail Weston left, asking for clarification. I didn't respond to the second message from Marlene either. This time it was only a sad face emoji followed by, "Don't let bitterness define you." Bitterness. As if that's all they thought I was capable of. I slid the phone into a drawer and left it there overnight. By morning, I had no urge to retrieve it. Instead, I placed the frame on the windowsill where the light hit our just before noon. The words cast a soft shadow over the sill, not quite legible, but present enough to be felt. I opened my notebook and wrote 2 sentences, not about them, not about the deed or the fight or the silence that came after. Just 2 lines about a kettle, a window, and a name that no one else could remove. Some mornings arrive without needing permission. I didn't check the phone. It had been muted for days, the screen smudged, but still whole, tucked inside the drawer with expired receipts and an unopened envelope from the water company. Nothing waited on the other end of that silence anymore. Not her clipped explanations, not his drawn-out sighs, not the pauses long enough to fit a whole childhood. The kettle hissed once, like it remembered its place. I poured water into the chipped ceramic mug with the faint ridge around the lip, the one with a hairline crack that never deepened. I'd stopped minding it. It held what it needed to. The chair by the window leaned slightly to one side. I folded the old knitted scarf across its back, the grey one with uneven rows where the tension had shifted halfway through. She used to say the mistakes were where the love lived. I let it rest without straightening it. Outside, the garden slept under a dusting of snow, quiet in a way that didn't ask for notice. The frost hadn't yet blurred the stone path where her herbs used to grow. One stubborn pot remained upright near the edge terracotta, holding its line. I wiped the bookshelf slowly, each title a name I knew by touch. A biography she never finished. A pressed flower tucked between pages of a novel I no longer wanted to reread. I adjusted the frame just slightly, her face caught in mid-laugh eyes, squinted sun behind her. The glass had begun to fog near the bottom corner, but the smile remained. There was a letter in the drawer. Folded 4 times. Dated on the back in handwriting I didn't recognize anymore. I'd written it at 20 in ink that had started to feather. It began with, "Maybe by 30 I'll understand," and ended with 5 whole lines crossed out. I held it near the edge of the fireplace and let it go. The flame didn't flare. It just took the paper like it had been waiting. My finger traced a small circle on the window pane, clearing just enough to glimpse the rooftops. Below, a child's laugh echoed off the alley bricks. A bike bell rang twice. The world continued. "You were never meant to be small," she used to whisper when brushing my hair. That voice doesn't visit anymore. Not because I've shut it out, but because it no longer needs to return. There was a knock once last week. Brief, then gone. A pamphlet slid under the door offering holiday discounts on carpet cleaning. No note from anyone I once knew. Nothing scrawled in haste or guilt or performative regret. I turned a page in the leather-bound journal I'd nearly filled. The spine cracked faintly. No headings, no explanations, just dated lines of what I noticed. A pale mark from a tea ring. The word solder. A quote overheard at the corner market. I wrote only one sentence today. Peace needs no witness. The scarf slipped slightly from the chair when I walked past. I didn't refold it. The mail came through the slot. A catalogue. A bill. A letter addressed to a neighbour who moved out months ago. I placed it aside. The world didn't need sorting by me anymore. When the phone finally lit up just once, it was a group message titled Family Update. I didn't open it. I deleted it without tapping. No images. No follow-up. The absence didn't sting. It simply stayed absent. I boiled more water. The steam rose gently against the window, replacing the circle I'd drawn earlier. This time, I didn't trace another. Someone from downstairs laughed too loud. A door closed. Another opened. Footsteps overhead. No voices that knew me. The ceramic mug clinked lightly when I set it down beside the folded paper where I had once drafted a will I never signed. I folded it again. I placed it beneath the tray. I didn't need to finish it. The shelf still carried her name, a brass plaque she never installed engraved with Nora Ellison. This is enough. I let it lean behind the photo, not displayed, not hidden, just there. I didn't turn on the lamp. The light through the window had softened. It held the room in one slow breath. The coat stayed on the hook. The boots near the door had dried mud from a walk I hadn't told anyone about. I reread the last entry in the journal. I didn't correct the spelling. The imperfection held. The letter opener, once hers, still rested where I'd last left it, beside the matches, both unsed now. The envelope I'd sealed for the county office remained unmailed. They already knew. There was nothing left to prove. My hand rested on the table's edge, the wood smooth from years of elbows and plates and waiting. It no longer asked for meaning. It held only what I placed on it. A noise outside, the crunch of tires over frozen gravel, didn't stir me. The fire had settled into coals. No crackle. Just the quiet glow of what remained. The scarf stayed where it was. The mug stayed full. I stood by the window, touched the pane again, left no mark this time. I didn't write anything more that day, not because there was nothing left to say, but because silence didn't feel empty anymore. I breathed in once, deep and slow. The air didn't push back, and when I poured one last cup, the mug still held.